Welcome to the Mics of the Round Table, presented by Cinescape Media, where we're going to set the table with topics from all areas. Right off the bat, just wanted to let you guys know that this show is brought to you by Cinescape Media Network. Be sure to visit cinescape.media for a complete listing of all the great podcasts and content that we have available. I am your host for today, Sean Harrigan. Joining us at the proverbial round table today is Bill Rowdy Tozzi.
Woo!
Dex Burgess of Suburban Paranormal.
What's going on?
And Mr. Mike Shea of Mixtape Radio.
I made stool.
Congratulations, sir. We're all proud of you.
Look what I can do.
Yay! Just off the bat, we do have a special anonymous guest joining us on the line. He prefers to not have his identity shared out. We're just going to call him Nero today. Exactly. Mystery guest Nero. How are you today, sir?
Hello, fellas. How are you?
We are fantastic. Thank you for joining us anonymously.
Big fan of the show.
That's
Talk lower.
Right off the bat, we do have sort of a heavier topic of discussion that we're going to get into a little bit later on in the show.
There's that word heavy again.
That's right. It's really heavy. It's weighing me down, but I got to get it off my shoulders because we're going to be talking about internet censorship a little bit later on in the show. But while we're all here and saying our hellos, let's say, see what's been going on. We've had a lot of unfortunate deaths in the news lately. We lost Jerry Stiller. We lost Little Richard.
Bucky Dent. Billy
Martin.
Stump Merrill.
Buck Showalter.
Billy Martin.
Yeah, we're losing a lot of guys here. What are we feeling? How are we feeling about this?
I mean, I talked about it on one of my other shows on Monday. It's like, this is feeling like, if you remember back like 2008, 2009, we lost Farrah Fawcett, Michael Jackson, and Ed McMahon all like on the same day. Like 09 was just back to back. Billy Mays, Heath Ledger, all of those, and it's starting to. And then 2016 we had the same thing. So it's like every 3-4 years it seems like they just start. It's like Thanos just shows up and snaps Hollywood.
Yeah. Bill, we're Beatles fans here. I know you are.
They're dead?
No, well, some of them are. Little Richard obviously was a very, very influential artist to many, many famous musicians and artists, but particularly the Beatles, especially in the early years. As a Beatles fan, and obviously a fan of Little Richard's songs, whether original or cover versions. How you feeling about losing a musical legend like Little Richard?
I was taken back because I can remember growing up, I had one of the single LPs of Little Richard, Tutti Frutti. And, I mean, he had just such, catchy, little, bluesy riff songs that were, like back in the day, they were technically like club hits, they were just these like little, club ditties that,
right.
That he performed, and
2-minute songs.
Yeah, little 2-minute songs that, were just meant to pump you up. And
got the dance hall moving.
Yeah, and I had that was a record that I would play when I was younger. So, definitely unfortunate. He lived a long life though, so kudos to him. He will live on through his music.
Absolutely.
I had a cassette tape growing up. I posted about this on Facebook when he died. When I was a kid, I had a cassette tape. I would have my mom play in the car, and it was just him doing like kid songs, like on top of spaghetti and stuff, stuff like that. But I would have my mom play it like to the point where and kids back in the day, this was a thing. You'd play a cassette tape so many times it wouldn't work anymore. And that's how
tape warped.
Yeah, I mean, Little Richard was just amazing. I love Little Richard.
I mean, just not only the style, but just his voice and the range he could get hitting those high notes. I mean, you try to do that now, and your voice just cracks, and you sound like you're going through puberty again. But yeah, definitely, a huge loss to the world of music. Also, we mentioned Jerry Stiller, iconic comedian. Was he 92? I think
he's 92.
I mean, it really trugged along there. Obviously, Seinfeld, King of Queens, all sorts of different things. Absolute comedic genius. I mean, you can't think of comedy pop culture and not throw out some George Costanza or Frank Costanza references or anything like that.
I got a lot of problems with you people. And we're gonna I remember he would still pop up on like sketches and stuff like on late night shows in the last few years, and the dude still had it. Like he hadn't lost his edge even with age. He still had that great timing and just no. There are very few people who can be that funny and that angry at the same time.
And that consistent.
He was. I mean, and you think about like the years of him and his wife when they were a comedy duo and appearing on like the Ed Sullivan Show, and you've seen obviously now their son Ben and what a megastar he's become. It's just you talk
Night at the museum.
Yeah.
Just talk about it.
But
Zoolander,
Tropic Thunder. I mean, like what a legacy in comedy they have left just by existing, and then with their son carrying it on. And like there's so many great comedic things we love now. Like The Cable Guy is one of my favorite Jim Carrey movies. That movie doesn't exist without Ben Stiller.
I got a real interesting side note. The band Crosby, Stills and Nash, actually Jerry Stiller was supposed to be in there and not Steven Stills. It was going to be Crosby, Stiller and Nash.
Really? I'm not sure if you're fucking with me.
It's one of those.
Dead silence.
Come on.
And see.
Don't you have a drum roll sound up on
go.
your fucking thing there?
There you go.
Yeah.
All right. Well, fuck you guys. You know what? We're just going to jump into our main topic today. Yeah, exactly. Like I said, our main topic of today is going to be internet censorship. So we have a esteemed panel here ready to debate and discuss all the inner workings of everything going on. So get ready to put your tinfoil hats on, possibly. A lot of what's coming out right now is a direct result of that Plandemic video that came out on YouTube and then was shared around social media. But after the Plandemic video came out, new measures to stop, quote, misinformation were rolled out by platforms like Facebook, Google, YouTube, and Twitter. Let's go back through the decades. I mean, obviously the internet hasn't been around forever, but it has been around for a number of decades now. And this kind of thing has been going on basically since the beginning, whether it's been with the internet itself or via word of mouth. Why is what's going on right now the absolute tipping point for why we're seeing this kind of censorship going on? Bill, let's start with you.
Why is censorship hitting a tipping point now? That is a great question. I think ultimately, you have to look at the curtain that we're under right now, which is election time. And I think there is, everything under the umbrella of things is, of course, heightened. Everything is a headline grab. People's attention now more than ever are affixed on those headlines. They don't read. They don't look into things. They don't go into a situation with an open head. So, the fear mongering that's taking place out there is at a big apex right now. So I'd have to say that the climate of it's probably due to, excuse me, my burger's coming up. Is due to the campaign season as well. So you have political parties gearing up, getting ready to start debating and start putting out all kinds of things, dirty laundry, things that they're going to be working on and stuff like that. So I think America as a whole and just what we're all facing is under a close microscope at the moment.
Okay, that's an interesting take, especially with the the whole campaign season coming up. Bill, before we move on to what everybody else thinks, I think your microphone might be scraping against your beard stubble there. just to let you know, you're kind of crinkling things. Dex, what say you on why everything is really coming to a head now as opposed to last election or the time when 9/11 was going on or any other major world issues?
I think it's just been a culmination. I mean, there's always
Culmination.
It's a culmination. I mean, it's always
American Pie,
something,
anyone?
something new is going to happen. So it's how do we protect the people more? And then it's each single event is just, let's take a little more. Let's do a little more. We got to do this. And then it's like, oh, well, maybe we do this. And it's like you said, we're coming at a point. It's like, where do you draw the line? You got to stop. Like, it's just, I think it's just been building over the past years. And I mean, like you said, Bill, with the coming into the election, I do believe it may have a small part of it because there was the whole thing with the internet censorship recently, or the freedom of information, not freedom of information, the freedom internet, whatever the hell it is. I can't think of the exact wording now, but that whole thing happened, and that plays into the politics of it. So being a campaign season, being this whole, pandemic of we have to make sure the wrong stuff or the right stuff's out there. It's just kind of a perfect storm. Everything kind of hit at once again.
That's a good take. I want to hear from Nero on this topic. Nero, what do you think about why the censorship is getting so ramped up right now?
It's like you guys said, it's all highly political. One side wants to control a narrative, it seems, and the other side is really doesn't have a platform that they own that deals with that. If you look at all the major tech companies, who they donate to, who they back for political leanings, they all lean to one side of the aisle. And the ones that seem to be getting, shadow banned or, demonized for making comments are the ones on the opposite side of the aisle. But you also have major news networks who get caught in the act using their social media, deceptively editing, putting a narrative through, and they're not paying the full price. Their price is just following up with a tweet or whatever it may be saying, oh, we regretted that we do that. And there's no repercussions for them. So it all depends on what side of the political aisle you are on in a lot of cases, and a lot of people may not disagree with this, but if you start peeling back the layers, you start seeing a pattern. And a lot of it is, I understand there's terms of use and all that kind of stuff with these platforms, but that line has become extremely blurred between, hate speech and promoting violence and whatnot. A lot of these things that are happening today aren't anything like that. So I'll agree with, the point so far that it's highly political. And if anything, it's more of a misinformation campaign by, usually both sides, but one side is usually more demonized and penalized than the other.
Yeah. That's a very interesting take. Mike, being our insider into this kind of world, where do you sit on things? Obviously you have a good look from your job, your desk, whatever closet they shoved you in at this point.
It's a closet.
Yeah, no other word for it really. But what's your take on all this?
I mean, I think a lot of the you talk about where's the sudden urge for, like, I guess you could call it control of information is coming from. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that we're dealing with something on a global scale right now that you can't really, I think we've mentioned this on prior shows. It's too steeped in fact, like something like a pandemic, a rampant virus is something that has to be dealt with in terms of scientific facts. And facts are something that you can't really opinionate on because they just are. And I think because it's something on such a scale that anyone who isn't a professional, like we can all watch football and have opinions on how a certain play should have been called based on our own knowledge of how football works. We can all watch a movie and have opinions about how a script should have been structured or a scene should have been edited based on our general knowledge of film. It's hard to have a generic opinion on a global pandemic when it's on such a level of scientific and medical knowledge that this isn't commonplace. And so I think where a lot of the fear and the misinformation comes from is people trying to have that kind of general understanding, but a lot of times what happens is when we get into certain amount, whenever the rare opportunity comes for someone to research a real world topic, not a lot of folks do that anymore. They look up just enough to like satisfy that craving for knowledge, for understanding, and then they just take that and run with it. They don't do like a thorough study into what it is they're looking for. And so what you end up having what happened was is once it starts getting into terms and concepts that people can't fathom, I think they just get scared, and that kind of panic starts causing saying, well, it's like whenever we say, oh, I can't read I don't know the name of the ingredient on the bottle scares me. Well, that's because it's got a big scientific name doesn't mean it's bad. It just means it's got a big scientific name, and it's the same thing as they can't fathom what's going on right now, and they can't really wrap their minds around it. So it makes it seem scarier, and so now there's this craving for just an easy answer, and this is a problem that doesn't have one.
All right, so we've heard from each one of our panelists on the issue. We want to know what you guys think. Why is everything right now ramping up so much to the point where we're literally being censored from various social media platforms, search engines, YouTube, things like that? We talked about the political angle of everything with the election coming up, and when you look at the actual types of information that are being shadow banned or removed, I think Bill, or I forget who, one of you said it, but it always does seem to be leaning toward one side of things. So right now, obviously, everything is with the COVID stuff. We're seeing, like we said with YouTube, last month, the YouTube CEO discusses that they are pulling content. She was on an interview with CNN. Susan Wojcicki, I believe is her name, said that the Google-owned video streaming platform would be, quote, removing information that is problematic. She told host Brian Stelter that that this would include, quote, anything that is medically substantiated. So people saying, take vitamin C, take turmeric, will cure you. Those are examples of things that would be a violation of our policy. Anything that would go against the World Health Organization recommendations will be a violation of our policy. So the CEO of YouTube is flat out saying that our standards align with the World Health Organization standards, and therefore anything that goes against what they are saying, we are getting rid of. Now, when we talk about freedom of speech and amendments and things like that, obviously, like Nero had said, there's terms of use for different platforms and things like that. But the problem that I'm having is whether you agree or disagree with the content that gets put out because of what subject matter it is, you still have the right and freedoms to be able to look into that more and question it. You shouldn't have to take everything that is coming out from the WHO at face value just because they said it, because they're the, quote, authority in it. If I went to the doctor and he told me that I had cancer, either I'd agree with him and start treatment, leave it go and work with it, or seek a second opinion. So basically, go ahead, Bill.
No, it was multiple choice, right? I was choosing C.
Oh, I thought you were gonna
he said C for cancer.
Yeah, I would probably want to seek a second opinion to make sure that what I'm being told by this doctor is substantiated by another doctor. So when we're having the ability to question things in a public forum or, quote, spread mis or disinformation, well, that may be true, but at the same time, we're allowed to do that as human beings. We can stand on the street corner and have a conversation. Is a cop going to come by and say, you can't talk about that? I don't think so. Now, the government can say, oh, well, you're violating our terms of policy of this country by talking out about that. And that's censorship, and that's not what our country stands for. So, I mean, you're not seeing posts, oh my God, coronavirus, everybody's going to die, start going out and hoarding everything, start killing and raping and all this kind of stuff. No, the information or, quote, disinformation that's coming out is just an objection to what is being told to us by, quote, authority figures or people that know more than we do.
And I got to ask, like, when did corporations receive, the same type of rights as like an individual in that sense? Because you make yourself an authority as a corporation, because you have, millions, billions of dollars to, brand yourself and get yourself to the point where your brand is instantly recognizable. But, when that happens, you become, a sort of authority automatically just by, sheer, size and numbers, and dollars, basically. And so, at what point does, does the censorship, travel down the ladder? Because if, if Brian with a Y out there is dating Tanya and Tanya gives him crabs and he decides to put on Facebook, Tanya gave me crabs, don't date her anymore. Is she going to be able to hit a flag button on Facebook and be able to have, a post taken down, as some kind of slander or libel against, what is technically fact? I mean, if Brian with a Y slept with Tanya and gets crabs, and he hasn't been with anybody else, I mean, who was it? So it's got to be true. I'm just saying, where does the buck stop, with this kind of censorship? If it's exclusively only to what is going to be potentially damaging to companies and things like that, but who is it at the same time too, with it taking place, who is it protecting? Because it's not protecting the American people, because the American people have the right to decide what information they receive is ultimately true and fact, as Mike was stating, and not just opinion. Because on social media we only have the attention span to read a headline and digest it and assimilate that as truth and move forward. So I don't really think it benefits the American people. I think it benefits the corporations that we're starting to find out that have their hands in operations that aren't in the best interests of citizens of the United States as well as around the world.
That's
Too
very
many
well
cooks in the kitchen.
Well thought out, Bill. Dex, what do you think?
No, I was gonna say, I mean, like you said, there's too many cooks in the kitchen. Where do you say who says who's what? Because like you said, if we're saying, okay, the who's the only guideline we have, well, what if it's a doctor from up the street? Exactly, who? So if we're only going by them, what about the doctor up the street that says, oh no, this is working for my patients? Are you going to remove that video because it doesn't follow the who, even though he's an accredited doctor for 20 years or so? Who's this? Like, you can't just put out such a broad guideline like that, because again, that's way over the line of, oh well, it's this or nothing. No, because again, the who is one thing, and then you have other governing bodies. I work in the medical industry. You have so many other governing bodies that, depending on region, one thing could be true versus another thing. So to just broadly say we're going to follow whose organization, whatever they say is gospel, well then no. I don't agree with that at all.
Mike?
I mean, it's on one hand, you have to consider, Google's I think they're a private organization. At the end of the day, it's if they don't want to.
They're a tech company. Google's a tech company.
Yeah. So
let's just call them what they are, right? They're a tech company.
Are they public or private? I don't know. But either way, it's
They're public.
They're public. Okay. It's one of those things where on one hand, like, yeah, it is okay. Anyone's that threw me off. Anyone's right and privilege and what have you to share whatever kind of video or content you want on on YouTube or whatever,
as long as it's not illegal.
As long as it's not illegal.
We're not sharing out like child porn or human sacrifices, right?
Yeah, don't do that. That's frowned upon.
Yeah, please don't do that.
It's frowned upon in most states. Close to 50. But it's it's on the other hand, Google does have their terms of service or whatever, and if they find that you violated, they have the right to pull it down. Okay, fine, whatever, it's cool. I'm not for the censorship of any ideas. I am, however, for the I am very much a proponent of people having the goddamn common sense and wherewithal to think with their brains and their mind muscles, and to, like I said earlier, to do their due diligence and do their research. Prime example, I I shared a link on Facebook that said like, this is the real reason why the government doesn't want you to leave your house. Now, if you had clicked on that link, it would take you to a Rickroll video.
I saw one of those today.
Now, my friend Amy, who I've known for close to 10 years, didn't click the link. She read the headline and started leaving angry comments and shit in the comments. You didn't actually read the article, did you? And she was like, blah, 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 conspiracy. I was like, no, seriously, click the link. And then she commented later, she's like, you suck. And I was like, you're just kind of proving my point, which is,
no, you suck.
you suck. And I was a little disappointed because it's like, you've known me 10 years. You know me better than that. Come on. But it just kind of goes to the point is like, if you guys want to post this pandemic video on YouTube, and I've made it no secret, I think the pandemic video is a fucking joke, and it just but I would also, it's not their responsibility. Oh shit, I got a broken wheel on my chair. It's not their responsibility for how other people think. That's how they think, and they made a video stating their opinions or what the hell ever, and their thoughts on the situation. It's up to the people to make their own, who watch it, to make their own decisions to choose to believe it or not. I can hope that people would watch the video and say, hey, this kind of seems like bull. But if they don't, that's their choice.
And that's the other thing that I think where the censorship might be a positive in some way, is that example that you just gave of how easily engaged a friend of yours was into just a headline. And the thing is that with this whole pandemic, everyone is affected in some base level way at all. Yeah. Everybody has got some skin in the game. So what that does is everybody has their own relativity to what is going on. So more than ever, does their opinion trump, no matter, what's going on in the world, in their world, they're going to let you know about what and how these things are affecting them. And so they don't care who you are, whether if you've been a friend for 10 years or you just, started, riffing in a fucking marketplace, posting or something,
right?
Over, God knows what. And so because everybody has been affected, everybody's now feeling entitled more than ever to, show what they've been through. And you know what? It's almost funny as a re-education in social media, because prior to this, what was important as in terms of social media? It was posting, everything that was positive in your life, which is a skewed, version of reality in itself, because nobody's living a perfect life. You show the highlights of your lives, kids, weddings, new houses, new purchases, whatever, concerts, you name it, whatever is going on in your life that is interesting and positive. It was all reflecting, parts of your ego. And then now, because that is switched off, people don't know how to go about portraying themselves in any kind of manner right now on Facebook. And they do that damagingly to themselves by, posting, blindly about things that they aren't up to speed on. And, it's a rough, thing to learn. A lot of people are learning about, struggles and strife at a young age, given that, most of our population is millennial aged and things like that. So, I mean, it's almost a lashing out at the same time of, not, giving that satisfaction of the knowledge, Mike, that you were, talking about being absorbed. And for the first time, the ego does not matter online. And there have been, hard lines drawn, I think Sean can attest to this too, where you start disagreeing, and to the point of, possible damage to relationships with close friends, family members, people that were, a week prior, you may not have had, any issue whatsoever. So I think it's just interesting to see that taking place as well.
Yeah, definitely. How many people have lost in this chat? How many people have had anybody unfriend or block them since the pandemic has started? Anybody?
Oh, me. And I've done a couple
No.
of unfriendings. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, I've done a few too.
I've done a few,
Yeah.
but mostly because for me, it wasn't, I will never, like eliminate someone just because like their political opinions are different than mine. For me, it more comes down to opinions of morality, is usually, or if someone's just being an asshole. There's that too. Well, you can have
Keep firing, asshole.
my buddy Robert, who I went to college with, he and I disagree fundamentally on just about everything politically, but that's not the issue. I never became friends with him for his politics. I became friends with him for his taste in music and video games.
Huge cock.
Exactly. But discourse itself, political and social discourse are pretty much just completely gone because nobody wants to think about what the news sources people get on their social media. Nobody gets news on their social media that doesn't fit their agenda, that doesn't fit their take on things. If you're predominantly liberal, you probably don't get a whole lot of conservative news into your feed on Facebook. And if you're predominantly conservative, probably don't get a lot of liberal news. We choose to create a bubble to exist within where all we are surrounded with is things that support our decisions. And most people nowadays aren't willing to have discourse and discussions about differing opinions where they can part ways and just say, hey, we disagree on X, Y, and Z. That doesn't mean we can't be friends. That doesn't mean
Exactly.
Yeah, it's not going to turn you into enemies if you have a difference of opinion about something.
Exactly.
But it's how you carry yourselves in the conversation that's going to make or break that relationship.
Yeah.
But it's also so much easier to have a more civil conversation, obviously, when you're face to face with somebody, because Sean, I'll use you as an example again. How many times have you gotten into a beef online and it stopped when you said, "Oh, I'll meet you outside," or I'll take all four of you on right now.
Crumb creep cowards! I'll take you behind the wall. I'll take the four of you.
I can't tell you how many times. I've seen Sean say like, "Oh, if I were to see you outside right now," and then like the guy stops talking.
Right, because it's true. Like you wouldn't be speaking to me that way if we were in front of each other, and I might not either until you push me to that point. But
exactly. But when you're online though,
comment section.
When you're online though, that attention span is hyper focused. It's minute and it's focused on spewing a reaction out, as fast as humanly possible. And when you're making reactions that quickly, you're not thinking things through logically and rationally to the point where you're thinking about that person and you're taking into consideration, obviously if you know them or not, and how they're going to respond. So that way, you have your next answer before they even reply. Because when you're online, you throw whatever's out there on your mind, and then what do? You turn your phone off and you just wait for that reply. And then when you get that answer, you're like, oh, let's fucking see what he says. So that nobody's thinking about the other person on the other end, and they're not thinking about how their response is going to play out, messages down the line. And
because what happens is you want to win the argument, right?
Right.
Everybody always
what are you winning? There's no trophy.
Exactly.
Facebook ain't giving you a badge.
Well, you know what they are going to give you, Bill? They're going to be giving you warnings, because Facebook is now going to be warning people that like or react to this new misinformation. Facebook announced that it will start warning users if they have liked, reacted, or commented on harmful COVID-19 posts that the company has found to be misinformation and removed. The feature will roll out in the coming weeks, even though it already started beginning doing that. From Facebook, Guy Rosen's vice president. These messages will connect people to COVID-19 myths debunked by the World Health Organization, including ones we've removed from our platform, leading to imminent physical harm. We want to connect people who may be interacted with harmful misinformation about the virus with the truth from authoritative sources, that in case they see or hear these claims again off of Facebook. So like we were just talking about previously with the World Health Organization being, quote, the authority on everything, well, now you're basically giving them the absolute say over what we're actually allowed to share out and talk about on a platform like Facebook. And Twitter actually just rolled something similar out today, as a matter of fact. So now you're giving this kind of supreme power, because let's face it, social media is a very important part of our daily lives as it is, especially right now where we're isolated and quarantined and can't go out without facing scrutiny or arrest. So when you are an organization that is saying one thing and not being checked, because if you check them, then that's, you know, going against guidelines, right? You're not allowed to even fact check anybody anymore. And you want to share out this information, well, now you're going to be warned, quote unquote, warned about it, and then you're probably going to, you know, continue doing it anyway as a big FU to everybody, and then you're going to get banned, and, you know, your digital identity is going to be taken away. So if you're somebody that runs an online business, or like us, where we have podcasts and things that we're trying to promote, well, if you take our digital identities away, then we have no way of reaching people. So Nero, I'd actually like to hear about what you think about this.
Nero.
Well, it goes back to the point you made earlier. It's, you know, you can slice it any way you want. It's censorship. That's really what it is. I mean, and that's not what you do in this country. I mean, censorship is a communist, Soviet, you know, tyrannical type of tactic that those type of governments use. Like, for example, and I don't want to use an extreme example here, like the Nazis burned books. You know what I mean? You know, the Chinese government, they control what, you know, happens on their internet. The Iranians, you know, it's another tyrannical regime. It's almost like, I don't want to say we're getting to that point, but this is right out of that type of playbook, you know? And if they're going to be putting those type of parameters in there, then what is the actual source of truth? You know, if you want to say, oh, well, this is incorrect, then show us what's correct. Back it up with statements, not just, oh, we flagged this as misleading and you're now warned. Well, what's so misleading about it? You know, this, to me, it's a precursor for, and it was also mentioned before, an election year. You know, if you look back at 2016, you know, and I hate to bring up history here and don't want to seem so partisan, but that was called what? The election of fake news, right? Mm-hmm. So there was a whole investigation about, oh, you know, the sanctity of our elections and the security of our elections and foreign interference and so forth. And a lot of things that came out at that time were being called, you know, false information. And the funny thing is, months later, a lot of them were proven to be true. So when you start getting to that point where you want to control what people say, what people think, it's really a fine line there where you're trampling on freedom of speech. Even if the information is right or wrong, it's up to those individuals to make up their own mind, to find their information that and how it reflects on them and what they believe in and what they want to believe. And they make their decisions based on that. You can't have this totalitarian control over the information that the individuals are sharing with themselves without any basis of truth, you know, especially on these platforms. So I'm against it, especially when you look at the Facebook group that they chose. That's another thing. It really highly questions that. They chose a bunch of individuals who are overseeing these posts, and they have the authority to flag what they feel inappropriate. Well, they're all from one side of the aisle politically. So it really raises questions about the validity of that. So, you know, totally against anything like that. And there really needs to be a fine line drawn. And the people need to be, you know, able to live in a free society like we have been for the past 200 or some odd years.
Yeah, it's a very good point there, Nero. I'm not going to get used to saying that. But going back, I believe, yeah, when we were talking about Google earlier, Mike, you brought up the fact, you know, whether it was a public or private organization, and Dex, you looked up that it was a public company, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we know that Google owns YouTube, and the videos that are getting taken down are primarily ones that are going against what the WHO is saying and what one side of the political parties are really saying. And let's just call it for what it is. It's Democrats. Anything that's going against what Democrats are saying is getting removed. Now, if Google and YouTube are a public company, a public entity, why is there such of a partisanship on that company from the higher ups that are funding and aiding the other side here? Why is that a legal thing? Isn't that a conflict of interest?
Especially when it's a user created platform. If they want to have those terms, don't make it a user created platform then. Completely change what you are and what you stand for since day one, because it's not a user created platform. If I understand people promoting violence and hate, that's completely unacceptable, and that's where you should draw the line. But just for sharing opinions and so forth and stories, that's, I don't know, it's a very fine line.
Because I guess the argument is that if I go on Facebook or Twitter and I start sharing out these quote unquote fake stories that incite people to go out and be violent, then that's not good. Well, what's to say that my post specifically made somebody go out and do that? Maybe it was a TV show that they watched, or a movie that they watched, or a book that they read, or a magazine that they read that made them go out and do this, or they're just fucking nuts themselves and went out and did it anyway. So now you're clinging to this idea that because people might have differing opinions than what you're trying to get across, well, then they might be going out and doing things and causing trouble that's not going to reflect well. So this is why the issue is so important. And there are so many people that if you go online right now and you're seeing things, because especially with this pandemic video, this is a lot of people's first foray into the quote unquote conspiracy theory world. Looking at the past, whenever you hear the word conspiracy theorist, what comes to your mind right away? Crazy people
Aliens.
that think alien, which the Pentagon pretty much just said aliens exist,
but they're real.
So if aliens are conspiracy, the government just said that they admitted to the biggest conspiracy theory of all time, possibly. So I guess we need to look who we're actually getting our information from in general. So to make a long story short, it's the censoring of information. If it's not something that is going against rights and liberties and freedoms, that's causing people to go out and commit crimes and commit murders and do things, you can't stop people from doing that. That's like Nero said. I mean, this is what communist tyrannical nations do, and that's not where we live. That's not what our ancestors fought for. That's why we're not any other country. That's why we are this country. And those need to be protected. And little by little, you're seeing different instances of different freedoms and liberties being taken away strategically because of what, Bill, you called it fear mongering earlier, which is exactly what's going on. We see all these terrible, terrifying posts, every other week. It's Asian murder hornets. It's COVID toe. It's all this shit that comes out that we see, whether it's actually real or not. There's COVID toe. Check it out. Look it up. Your toes start turning colors if you have the virus. It's crazy. So if mainstream media is putting out this kind of stuff that's instilling fear into people on a digital platform, well, isn't then this new committee supposed to be stopping that kind of thing? Doesn't it go up the ranks to who's actually greenlighting this kind of content going out? So if you have network executives and CEOs that are okay with this stuff going out, whether it's right or wrong, who's going to hold them accountable? It's not going to be anybody on that panel, but it's the people with the people with the money and the power that can sway public opinion and make you think whatever they want you to think.
Right. Like for example, Sean, I don't mean to cut you off. Like a perfect example of that, if you look back 2 weeks ago, well, how come the Speaker of the House's account isn't deactivated or suspended? When did, the President of the United States say, "Oh, inject bleach"? His words never came out of his mouth.
Right.
But that was spread around in circles and people led to believe. So where's the same rules that apply there? And I'm not trying to say that I'm, picking one side or the other, but that's just one example. And like you said of the mainstream media, well, one of them was just caught lying this past weekend, spreading information about it in a deceptively edited video. and their only repercussion is we regretted that we aired that. They're not held to the same
You're
standard.
speaking about Jimmy Kimmel, I'm assuming, correct?
Jimmy Kimmel and also Chuck Todd on Meet the Press.
Yeah, I was gonna say the Meet the Press guy. So you're talking about.
Yeah,
I agree on that.
Yeah, correct. So I mean, it's like, so if you know, Phil Stanley or Sean Harrigan, whoever, did the same thing, they'd be flagged, or it'd be like, oh, this is not correct content, or you're going to be banned, or your account's being suspended. But like, who are we? You know, just because something's on a screen, do people have to believe it? You know, like, oh, I see something on TV, I have to believe it. You know, I see something on YouTube, I have to believe it. That's not always the case. You know, so to your point again, and we're probably going to keep circling back to this. It's a very fine line, but I agree with what you're saying. But you know, it's just a dangerous time to. I don't know how to say this without sounding scary. Where you can't really trust your own government, and you can't trust, you know, the own platforms that you use every day. So it's just a scary line of thinking.
Mike, I'd like to get your take as somebody who is in the kind of job position that you are in. I want to go off the Jimmy Kimmel thing now. For background, Jimmy Kimmel aired a segment of Mike Pence in Virginia delivering PPEs to a nursing home. During that, his mic was hot at one point, and he made a joke about delivering empty boxes after they had already delivered everything. Now, Jimmy Kimmel went on air and made a big thing about it, and then once he was found out to be not being truthful, he put out this bullshit apology. And actually, I just saw today he put out like a 5-minute apology, explainer of the apology even, and didn't have any kind of remorse for sharing out quote misinformation, which the rest of us, if we did that, apparently now we're going to get warned or blocked or banned. So what do you think about the fact that this kind of thing does take place within a business like yours, where and I'm not saying that your station does that or you do that or anything like that, but this instance and the CBS clip of the drive-through testing where they were putting the workers in line, making it look like there were all these people lined up outside when in fact that wasn't true either. What are the repercussions that you know of in your business that if you're found to be doing something like that, what's going to happen?
So full disclosure, I had not seen the Kimmel clip or the drive-through testing clip. So I hadn't seen those. Despite working at an ABC station, Kimmel comes on after I leave. They keep changing when it's on. Repercussions for stuff like that can be pretty weird, and so just so everyone is aware who's not aware, I work for a local news affiliate here in Dayton, Ohio. I'm not a journalist anymore. I was years ago for a different outlet. I work in the control room now. What I can tell you, just as someone who's worked in broadcasting and journalism for a long time, is repercussions for that can vary. It depends on the nature of the misinformation. There's always an investigation. I can say that right off. And in terms of Jimmy Kimmel, there probably wasn't a huge one, mostly because he's not a journalist. He's he's a comedian and an actor. It's a comedy show. He's not held to the same standards of accuracy as say as a Meet the Press might be, or a Fox News. Even John Oliver has gone on the record and said, like, somebody gave him a hassle about something that was misreported on his show, and they asked him, well, don't you feel some responsibility as a journalist? And he's like, I'm not a journalist, I'm a comedian. He's like, I got writers. But anyway, like I was saying, so it varies, but there's always an investigation. They look into like how far down the line, like where exactly the error came from. Is the error on the journalist, on the reporter who maybe misread a script? Well, was the script read wrong? Well, how or why was the script written wrong? Who was the source of the information? Did the source give misinformation? It creates a whole domino effect. That's why they're always so big on making sure you check and vet your sources and things like that, especially on the local level, and then there's always fines. I mean, the FCC, most people don't hear, and I say you guys as in the broad spectrum, not you four specifically. FCC issues fines to stations every damn day. We just usually don't hear about them unless they're like monumental. Case in point, there's a company right now whose name we're not going to say on the show, who got slapped with the largest FCC fine in history over some misrepresentation that took place about a year or two ago. It was like a $50 million fine, which is a shitload of money, even for a big company. But like basically, yeah. But the repercussions can vary. Again, it depends on where the error took place. The FCC has to change those rules all the time. You guys will remember back in 2014, there was a lady who was a reporter for a news station in Alaska who was doing a story on a marijuana farm in the area. Well, it turns out, and the news station wasn't aware of this, she was the owner of that marijuana farm, and she just happened to get assigned to researching that story. And so she did her story and then live on the air admitted to being the owner of that pot farm, and then said live on the air, "Fuck it, I quit."
I remember that. I remember seeing that clip.
Yeah. So in the olden days, meaning just like about 6 years ago, an expletive like that getting dropped on the air would put the station's FCC license at risk. Fines, jobs would be lost to recoup the cost of those fines, things like that. Stuff like that, along with the fucker and the pussy guy, jumping on. The FCC had to make drastic changes because there's just certain things that live programming you just can't account for. But again, it causes them to launch into investigations like what could have been done to prevent this, if anything. And so when you're dealing with the misrepresentation of facts on a news station, again, it just comes down to where did the error take place? Could it have been caught? Who actually made the error? And then also, what is the responsibility of, what responsibility does the outlet have? And, I know people like to because nowadays late night talk shows, everything from Jimmy Kimmel to John Oliver, are so news and politically oriented just because of the current social climate that we're in. At the end of the day, they're not held to very much of a standard because they're not news. They're comedy shows. So the general consensus is, and I'm playing devil's advocate here, because that's my job, is just, take everything they say with a grain of salt. And, odds they're not going to put as much, they're looking for laughs and hit and ratings. They're not looking for information distribution.
But if Joe Schmo on Facebook is doing the same thing, just because he's not, rich and famous and a celebrity, he's going to get in trouble for it.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not saying it's right. I'm just telling you the state of things.
Right.
Unfortunately, anybody who is shocked at the idea that the world is not fair and balanced for the little guy is living at a level of naivete I am frankly envious of. The idea of the average everyday guy not getting a fair treatment compared to the rich famous celebrity is nothing new. That's been going on since the invention of the word celebrity. I mean, it's not right, and it's bullshit. Again, I am not for the censorship of ideas at all. Again, to play devil's advocate, there is a certain level of, like for the same reason you can't shout bomb or fire on an airplane. There is a certain level of looking out for the general well-being of the average person. Decorum, exactly. Squirrel. But, I think Nero mentioned earlier, the line is very blurred because, unfortunately, the laws haven't quite caught up with the technology yet, because the people who make the laws haven't caught up with the technology yet, because people that make the laws are 100 fucking years old. So in order for the laws and policies of the country and businesses in general to get caught up, even the tech companies themselves aren't as caught up as far as their policies go, because they're out of touch with the average everyday person. And until the laws of the land and the technology of the land get in sync with each other, like everybody thinks there's a internet crime division of the police. There's not. That's not a thing. That's something that developed to get ratings. That kind of thing doesn't exist, because the laws simply don't exist. They're starting to roll out, and there's been a huge leap forward in the last, I'd say, probably 10 years, as far as things that are, especially with the advent of like the iCloud hack from a few years ago, when every female celebrity's iPhone got hacked, and and a lot of guys are creating new screensavers for their computers.
Put it in the spank bank.
Exactly. That's kind of where the biggest problem comes down to is the reason the lines are so blurred, and the reason that things feel as, to use the word you guys used earlier, totalitarian, just this kind of this iron fist coming down, is because frankly, the people making these policies they just don't know how to deal with the problem. And rather than try to come up with a solution to deal with the problem, they're like, well, fuck it, just ban it and we'll deal with it later. They'd rather just block it and ban it now and then say I'm sorry later and come up with a better idea 5 years down the line, rather than take the time now to fix the issue.
Like the James Gunn thing, for example.
What?
Remember that whole scenario with James Gunn?
Yeah.
When everything was dug up on him and his apparently over 1,000 pedophile quote jokes over his Twitter timeline for a number of years, fired by Disney, obviously a company that makes a lot of this content for that age group, and then hired back within months. So, I mean, where is the line? What are the rules? Because then there's someone else who does maybe something to a lesser extent, and they're not only banned from the platform, their life is over. Their career is over. So it really, I don't know. There really needs to be some sort of streamlined rules, because it seems like the goalposts keep moving when situations like this arise.
Yeah, and then just one more to highlight the the ramifications of being headline readers or not understanding what's going on in the news or taking the news at face value. You look at every major conflict that the U.S. has been involved in since 1990, with the Gulf War and everything. Every time it comes out, well, what do you hear? You hear stuff in the news that makes people think a certain way, and then that green lights the okay to go to war, right? The one woman said that people were taking babies out of incubators in Iraq and smashing them on the floor. Then we went to war. All this kind of thing. So when you have, like Mike said, the totalitarianism, of okay, well, you can't speak out about anything, and you're just going to believe and accept what we tell you. Well, what if you're telling us? What if what you're telling us isn't the actual truth? Then you're making us to believe a lie. And that's the part that's really scary when you have these censorships coming down, because I could say I saw Bigfoot outside my door yesterday and I could actually believe it, or maybe I even seen it, but people are going to choose to believe it or not. But if the government comes out and says, oh, X country did this and these people are terrorists and these people are whatever, then okay, well, we have to believe it because they told us, and go to war and do whatever you want.
And think about this. I mean, this panel right here, I mean, probably the most significant event that we lived through in our time was 9/11. And just think back to the moment when that event occurred. You all know where you were, time, place, things like that. But you also remember, at the end of the day, when you finally absorbed the news and stuff like that, you can't tell me you all didn't have some kind of hatred towards Arabs or those general people, because our news was all just labeling this was an Arab attack, these were Arab terrorists, we need to go after the Arabs. It was, you had your target, every American, even the Arabs that lived here, you knew they were dude, they're fucking up back home. You know what I mean? Everybody had that painted target on, overseas, Arab terrorists. And, the media swayed you into, who our enemy is right at that moment. And, it creates its own pandemic right there of fear and racism, and you just don't care, at that point. You got people just walking around any brown person's gonna get it, and you're like, all right, we got to slow down. Nobody's climbing up this fucking building and planting C4 or anything like that. Just relax, but the media creates that bubble for you to to live in under fear. It's either live in fear or go after the enemy. and right now the enemy is painted internally, just within our White House. You don't have to like them or anything like that, but the thing is I refer to him as the president, and that's his role, that's his title, and you have to, you're not going to like everything somebody's going to do, but you have to take the time to assimilate the information and realize like what is somebody's true doing here. And right now, that target is painted internally within the U.S. and it has us divided more than ever.
I'm sure Sean would agree with this. If you haven't seen the documentary Hoaxed, I highly suggest it. It really
I would.
What we do.
It's very good. Whether you're somebody who is into the whole quote unquote conspiracy theory, whatever you want to call it. It's an eye opening thing just in terms of what is current. It's really applicable to what's going on right now. So it's by Mike Cernovich as the host of that one. I believe it's on. It's probably on YouTube now, but it's maybe it'll get taken off of there as well. But we don't want anybody to listening out there to think that we're all leaning toward one side or the other. We're honestly trying to come together as a group of individuals who may think differently, and we're trying to collectively gather our thoughts and try to make sense of what is going on. So you're going to have people that are left wing, right wing, or totally independent. Like I'll be transparent. I'm not a Democrat. I am not a Republican. I don't align myself with any particular political affiliation. If I see a headline and then I read the article and the article is completely different from what the headline reads, I'm going to call bullshit on it, whether it comes from a Democratic source or a Republican source. I don't care. I don't want to be lied to by anybody. It doesn't matter what color shirt you wear. And when with all the stuff going on, I feel like as my rights and liberties and freedoms as an American are slowly being taken away little by little. And the fact that we're so fear mongered and enveloped in what's going on right now and listening to what everybody is saying, we're all being kind of pitted against each other just because of our political affiliations. Never have we been so divided as a country. In my 30. One of my almost 34 in my entire life, I've never experienced what we're going through right now. We brought up 9/11 earlier, and we saw how the general American public reacted to seeing Muslims days after, or even for weeks and months and years after. I mean, there's still people out there that have a disdain for all Muslims because of what happened, even though it's got nothing to do with anything. Yeah. It's all bullshit. So it's the way that we take in the information that we are seeing or being told or reading or whatever it may be. It's up to us to make a determination and let our actions speak accordingly. It's okay to think something, but if you're going to act in a way that's not appropriate, then that's a problem. But it doesn't come from Bob's Facebook post about he said Democrats are stupid. It didn't come from somebody's tweet. It comes from people that you trust. So if you trust, say, a local news outlet, if you trust Mike to show you the news and he's showing you bullshit, well, then you're probably not going to trust Mike anymore, right?
Bullshit.
So when we keep seeing all these stories of fake news, that's the problem.
I do share bullshit. There's a good chance it just leads to a Rickroll video. I'm just saying.
Right. I heard you have to get a Twitch account to watch the Basement Lounge podcast. Is
absolutely. Even though I said 3 times in my show, you need one. I'm telling you, you need one.
Oh, that's great.
And Sean and Bill, real quick to your point. You guys mentioned 9/11 and everything, and we took a little trip down memory lane.
What? Mike, you hit the soundboard?
So, anyway.
I think Dex hit the soundboard.
Yep. Live baby.
So you go back and it's like, okay, well, remember how it was then. I remember how I felt. And it's really sad to say today that we're in a global pandemic and that doesn't even unite anybody in any sense of the word.
No,
it's all Right. It's all overly politicized, and it shouldn't be for either side. And where 9/11 was, a uniting moment for the country. I mean, one of the things that you remember at that time is how many American flags were sold and displayed in
Everywhere.
homes.
You couldn't
It
buy
was
one.
everywhere. They were sold out of American flags, and that's just one thing. And now you look today, and it's like, here's something else that should be uniting, and it's just so more divisive than ever. And it's really sad for the whole state of our country as it is. But then again, it's like, well, why is that? If you look at 9/11, well, social media wasn't really around in 2001. Is it social media? Like what is it? What is the factor that is dividing everybody? And I don't think there's an answer for that right now, but I really hope that there are better days ahead.
One thing I wanted to kind of bring up just again, because I like playing devil's advocate, and that's what I do. One thing I will say is I do feel like if you look at the history of, I brought up, the state of discourse in this country. If you really trace it all the way back to when 9/11 happened, and now I feel like I'm putting yarn on thumbtacks on a corkboard right now, but
Pepe Silva.
it really does feel like,
Yes.
because 9/11 was such a weird time in our country, because that was the first time, and for as long as anyone could remember, that like we had been we had taken a hit. It's like the equivalent of like Superman feeling pain for the first time and doesn't really know how to handle it. And I feel like the country really didn't know how to handle something like what happened on 9/11. We just couldn't fathom it. We couldn't wrap our heads around something so tragic and intense happening to us, because up to that point it was, we're America, we're fucking invincible, just step over here, see what happens, motherfucker. And somebody did, and they hit it, and we didn't know how to handle it. So I think that's part of the reason why we all turned internally and came together, because at that point it felt like everyone, because even before before like a lot of the anti-Muslim craze came about, we didn't know who hit us, and we felt like the entire world was out to get us. So we were kind of forced to turn internally and come against each other. To your point, Nero, it's shocking to me too that this hasn't been more unifying, because this isn't even just a national issue. This is a global issue. And it's a little disappointing to me that like the entire fucking world hasn't rallied together in this weird sense of unity to help each other out. It's still become countries pointing fingers at each other. Who do we blame? Whose fault is this? And how do we help each other and do better than the we're doing better than this country. Well, why is it a contest? Why can't we all just be helping each other out? It's strange to me that, like you, that this hasn't been more of a unifying situation.
I'm surprised too, and I mean it's when I kind of the spin off your analogy there, it's kind of like the Rocky series. It's like 9/11 happened, and it was like Rocky 1 and 2, and you get knocked down, but you come back, and you come back stronger, you win, you feel back on top again, and then it feels like we're in the beginning of like Rocky 3 when Clubber Lang just like breaks Balboa, and he's like lost his whole way of living and stuff like that, and he's got to like retool and train in like South Beach and stuff like that, and go on a diet and figure out how to like get back to work. And then at the same time, it's like you lose Mickey, who was keeping you up the whole time and keeping you on track. He dies, and so it's like, you talk about none of the country standing up. No, like there's been no like profile leader in all of this to kind of like spearhead or shine above the rest. And you got like a country that is just complacent and pacified right now. Who knows if that's on purpose, but it's a country that's that's got no direction, no way to go and get up and get moving. So it is it's concerning.
I just feel like Mr. T.
More defeating.
It is, and the sowing of discourse, has been so. It's just what is going on right now is it's too much to be such a coincidence that we're all turning against each other right now, because when you look through history, whenever you want to take over a place, you divide, you conquer, and it makes it a lot easier when you don't have a united people to go up against. So, you know, whether we're actually at war with anybody that we don't know about right now, that I'm not going to speculate on anything like that. But, you know, let's just say, for instance, somebody wanted to come. Yeah, that's right. You know, you want to say somebody's at war with us, and then they can come in and easily take over because half the country is not going to stand up to them. So yeah, it's just a crazy time that we're living in right now.
Yeah, it's crazy, Sean. To your point, I was just thinking something like that. Like, say, what if, you know, the worst case scenario happened, and I really hope it doesn't again, but there's something that happens on U.S. soil. Will that even be a uniting moment, or will that be a finger pointing session? You know, it's, you know, say, God forbid, something like 9/11 happens again, or close to that scale. Will this country even unite then, or are we so divided and so just, I want to be right, I want you to be wrong, and I want you to prove to you that you're wrong, that I'm still going to just stand my ground here, when in fact we should be uniting because we're all, like Superman said in 1978 movie, we're all on the same team. You know, and it doesn't feel like that anymore. And it's really something you should question. I really hope it's something that never happens and we have to see, but right now it's anybody's guess.
So
absolutely, Pat.
Looks like Sean is having some technical difficulties. He's
Mr. Miami.
It looks like Google shut down Sean Harrigan for
they did not like his opinion.
They didn't like his opinion on opinions.
Yes,
because
not at all.
Because Sean's a styling, profiling, limousine riding, jet flying, kiss stealing, wheeling, dealing, son of a gun.
But I guess Dex has his own baby themed soundboard going on.
Yeah.
So in the interest of wrapping this thing up and bringing it to a close, because I think we're all kind of saying the same thing here, which is just censorship bad, the world sucks,
censorship bad,
and tacos are delicious. And Sean's
absolutely.
So but I do want to thank our special guest Nero for coming on and talking. And we've leaked your identity to the feds, so they should be knocking on your door very
soon. This is Nero.
Thanks for having me.
VPN.
I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So yeah, thanks for coming on, man. I really appreciate it. So we obviously don't want to tell the people where. Normally we say, so where can the folks find you online? But that's what we're trying to avoid. So
the dark web.
Yeah, right.
Dark web.
I know Sean's got his show, The Eagle's Nest, which is his Eagles themed podcast here at Cinescape Media. Bill, what about you, man?
OnlyFans. That's where I'm at right now. You know, times are tough. Continue to donate. I'll send you a special video.
Yeah.
I got premium snaps too.
Just because of his feet and balls, everywhere.
Slide in my DMs. Slide in.
Slide in your DMs. Slide into you. And
I dare you.
And Dex, what about you, man?
As you can see up here on the screen, you can always find me at Suburban Paranormal. Episode just came out this past weekend. We talked about a bunch of stuff again. A lot of interesting stuff going on lately in the paranormal world. So check me out on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and always available to chat.
Ooh, I wonder if these current events are related.
Interesting stuff in the world of paranormal. A lot of folks dying, a lot more ghosts in the world. That was in poor taste. My name is Mike Shea. You guys can check out Mixtape Radio on Mondays, except this freaking Monday because I completely forgot to put an episode out because I'm a moron. But Mondays we play awesome music for you guys, so check that out as well. Head on over to Cinescape.media. Check out all the information on the podcast we have going over there, plus everything else we have going on, including this show. And with that being said, thank you to everybody. We're going to table this discussion until next time. And this has been Mike's of the Round Table. We'll see everybody next week.
Peace.
Hey,